Hi, I'm Rick the Railroad Guy, and welcome to the Dynamite Rio Verde and Eastern Railroad. We're in northeast Scottsdale, Arizona, and this is my job. We built a railroad here that's just over 2 acres, 3,800 feet of track plus, and 2 main lines at 1,252 feet each. The railroad itself was started in January of 2002. We started the roadbed in November of 2002, and we tied the main lines up May 10th of 2003. We've been running trains ever since, and the railroad is pretty much a double track main line, something similar that you'd find in the Midwest, running heavy freight and some passenger trains during the 1950s. We have one major town, which is called Margaritaville, and it's about 12 city blocks in scale, with the trolley track and everything else that a 1955 town would have. As you can see, the rail yard itself is a train barn that is 7 tracks eastbound, 7 tracks westbound, each 30 feet long to hold trains. We can hold 14 trains at any time and run pretty much within an hour of the time I show up on site. Everything we do is done with local link and battery powers so that anybody can walk into this railroad and within 15 minutes be running a train of their own around the railroad. Takes about 20 minutes per lap, and you want to cut cars, we got a place that you can cut 24 cars out of a freight train and cut 24 cars back in, and you come back with a totally different train. You want to be an express passenger service, we've got 2, maybe 3 stations that you could stop at. Some of the other interesting parts, we have a ballast mine, we have a gold mine, we have a couple of tank car facilities, so that any kind of car you want to have on your train, it looks right. We can run steam or diesel, anything all the way up to the big boys that USA Trains makes, and we can run on a normal basis a 90-foot train without too many problems whatsoever. We call that scissors trestle. Actually, I call that scissors trestle because I named it. And scissors trestle came about because the woman that owns the railroad, her name is Pat, she said, I don't care what you build out there, I just want to see trains go over and under themselves. So we built a loop up here, which is Rancho Oso Rio, and we built the scissors trestles down at the far end with the tunnels where the hobo jungle is, so that people have a reason to walk out far on the railroad to see the whole railroad. Being that it's a little over 400 feet wide, people will normally stand on the deck and just stare and try and see the little tiny details a quarter of a mile away. Instead, we built platforms in 3 different places so that you can go out, stay comfortable, see the railroad, and have a different point of view each time you walk around the railroad. If you're running a train, there are paths that are just basically ideas of paths. Most of the time, nobody pays attention to them and they walk anywhere on the railroad. The railroad is built bulletproof. You can step on anything, trestles, bridges, town, tracks, switches. Nothing is going to get harmed. It's all on a concrete ribbon. I've been building these railroads for 14 years, and I found that you have to build them so that anything can happen and the trains keep running. I like to say that people don't pay me to build a railroad. They pay me so that the trains run every single time they want to come out and play with them. For the most part, all you've got to do is go out, blow the tracks off with a weed blower, check the switches to make sure the points drop, set up your battery car, take your train out and go. First train out on any railroad is the most dangerous. It's the one that's going to hit the stupidest things every single time. You want to do the first train in any direction you're going to run the trains before anybody shows up as a visitor. That way, when they show up, the trains run beautifully, everybody thinks you're a god, and it works out well. I hate it when the owners walk up to me and say, let's run a train, and I have 8 minutes to go out and fix a railroad, because I know that train's going to hit the ground 3 times on the first lap. And that's the last thing anybody wants to see when they've spent this kind of money on a railroad. So we make them idiot-proof because I'm the idiot that has to fix them. Now, being that this is a private residence, they don't often allow me to have groups of people in. But we have come to an agreement that Friday nights, provided it's under 100 degrees in temperature, I can open up the gates on the 144th Street entrance, which is the railroad entrance, And literally anybody that knows about the railroad that wants to run trains can show up between 3 o'clock and sunset on a Friday night. Kids, adults, it doesn't matter. Everybody's 12 years old once they put a controller in their hands and they have a train to run. Now, most of the people over 40 want a steam train. Most of the people under 30 want diesels and a big long freight train. This railroad can handle just about anything you want to throw at it, and I can put as young as a 3-year-old child with a controller within 5 minutes and let them go. The only rule I have, for the most part, is you want to stay far enough away from the train so if you fall down, you don't hurt the train. As you notice, in a lot of the places on the railroad, you'll see rock formations just jutting out of the ground. Those are all concrete poured forms, similar to what people did in HO scale with plaster of Paris 20 years ago. These are large sheets of lightweight concrete that are made up and broken up by a man named Bruce Ambrose of Canyon Creations. He'll come in and make all these rock forms for us. They look absolutely stunning and like they've been there 1,000 years, as though the railroad actually blasted through them. That's one of the highlights on the whole railroad, is all the rock formations, and it makes it look like it really belongs here. When the camcorder, as you see, gets down low and the trains come by, if we have all the stuff on the locomotive so they look right, you don't know it's not a real train. You'll also notice on the railroad, we have a lot of wooden trestles that I built and a lot of steel bridges that Dan Hogue at Eagle Wings Ironcraft made. Dan's a very good friend of mine, and I wouldn't have anybody do steel work but him. When we first started out here, it was just PVC pipe on the ground with a general direction of where the trains were going to go. And I called Dan in and I showed him where I wanted the bridges. And he just looked at me and said, well, what do you want? I said, well, you see that span? That's 22 feet. I want a bridge there. And it has to have 3 piers. I'll put the piers in. Okay. See that span? It's 16 feet. I want a special bridge there, 16 feet wide, 1 span. Okay. What do you want it to look like? I don't care. Do your thing. Go have fun. Make the bridges that you make the best. I don't care what the style is. They just all have to be the same color. When you bring them back, I'll put them in. Well, how do you know they'll fit? Dan, you're the best at building bridges. I'll put the abutments in where I need them, and they'll look great. Well, we have 91 feet of steel bridges on this railroad and 96 feet of wooden trestles, because I wasn't going to give Dan Hogue top billing. I had 4 months to start off with to design it. And again, we did that with white PVC pipes, snaking it out on the ground until the owners came out and said, yeah, that's far enough. Yeah, that looks like it'd be cool. How are you going to make that happen? Well, I don't know, I haven't got that far yet. And once we did the original survey, which took about 2 weeks, we took the PVC pipe and we started stabbing it vertically off the ground where the track level was going to be within a couple of inches, so we could actually get a visual of horizontal, vertical perspective of how this whole thing would work. The scissors trestle was the first thing that we designed out, so we make sure that it would go over the top of itself correctly at less than a 2% grade. The tunnels we built exactly 30 feet long, and there's 3 tunnels, so they match the tracks in the train barn below, so that if I'm running trains and they say we're going to dinner, I have 2 places on either end of the railroad that I can stab a train where it's out of the way, and I can get in the car and go to dinner with them. Crazy, I'm not stupid. On that, once we had that laid out, it took another 3, 4, 5 weeks of perfecting where we wanted everything to go, to figure out the fill we had to bring in, the cuts we had to make, and then we laid the ribbon of concrete. And that was actually the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. We did it by hand mixing 60-pound bags of concrete in a little tiny 2-ton mixer. Never again. I am a firm believer in small mix trucks and pumpers. Pump the grout, fill the holes, you're done. Never do it again that way. But the whole railroad is built on a 4-inch thick, 12-inch wide concrete sidewalk, so that you can walk anywhere on the railroad. Once that was done, it took us less than a week to actually lay out the double track main line all the way up and down the hill. When we finally tied up the mains on May 10th, 2003, we had a little ceremony over there. I shook the hands with the guy that did it. We ran a train all the way around in each direction, And it was another 6 or 7 months before we actually earnestly got into building the railroad. Tracks are the easiest thing you can do. It should be the last thing you do. It is never supposed to be the first or second thing, because then people trip on it, fall it, you break it, you start over again. Once we had all the ballast in place and the rock formations in place, it has just been a work in progress ever since.